It's official. The church is useless. Hi, I'm Scott.
Hi, I'm Mark.
So, uh, this week has been, it's been a normal week, and you can't have great headlines every week. But this
No.
one stuck out to me as being like succinct and like right there. So here's the headline from ChristianHeadlines.com.
Okay.
Americans trust the government more than the church to make meaningful change, telling us something that we've already known, right? And so Barna,
Yeah.
who frequently does these polls, and I think Barna typically chooses Christians as kind of like the base of their polling. And so this is just kind of a reminder of something that we know but we don't talk about often, which is most Americans think the church is full of crap.
Yeah, and it's like it's one of those when I saw this headline in the first place, I'm like, well, yeah, because like everything that we've done and 70 other episodes of the show is like every reason that the world at large looks at the church and goes, nah, nah.
Not so much. Right, so here is the kind of top line takeaway of the poll.
Okay.
52% of U.S. adults believe the national government is, quote, responsible for creating meaningful change, unquote, while only 26% answered that way about religious organization and 25% about Christian churches specifically. Right? So,
Yeah, that's not a flattering percentage.
right. So in the question um, of creating pathways of change, who does it more and who does it best? It looks like the takeaway is, well, in recent memory, it looks like the government at all levels, national, state, county, city, it looks like the government creates more meaningful change more often than does the church and other religious organizations. What do you think about that?
Um, I think when you look at Europe in general, like in Europe is very secularized, right?
Yeah,
Like it's at least a stereotype of Europeans that they view Americans as being kind of, generally speaking, a bunch of fundies, just kind
yeah,
of from like
right,
top to bottom,
right.
and and so you see a lot of like the social programs in Europe and how they work and sometimes how they don't work. But like
Yeah,
you see a lot of positive change, when you have people in European countries, like Finland, for instance, has like the top rated education system in the world. Most European countries have, better health outcomes than the United States even, right? So it's like you can look to like
right.
other countries like that and see like how they exceed our own country's government in
Yeah.
performance. So when people are saying that, yeah, no, but our government's still better than the church,
Hmm.
like it's almost maddeningly stupid.
Yeah. Um, it
But I
well,
get where you would want to say government is generally speaking more effective than the church because, like the church likes to look for problems and never actually barter any kind of solution for it.
right. Like there's kind of this truism that exists over time that you know what's important to people by where they put their money,
Right.
right? And the church used to put its money to things like building hospitals,
Hmm.
building homeless shelters, building food kitchens, things of that nature. But over time, the church has redefined itself, like everything does over time, has redefined itself in America to be a conversion machine, right? That the primary mission of the church is to make believers. Um,
Right. And like when we talked about like these evangelistic events that people like to hold.
yeah,
And like again, the vast majority of people that attend these things are Christians because, non-Christians don't know who the heck jars of clay are, or they don't, or whoever like a popular hip, among Christian youth is today.
yeah,
But it's like
yeah,
they don't know what Christian bands are. They might know like some bands that have managed to like get more secular stuff, but they're not like looking at the acts. The speakers are always, like, Amy Grant or what's her name, Kirk Cameron's wife, Candace Kirk Owens or something like that. I, I
okay,
I've read her name like a bazillion times this last week and can't remember it. But it's like these are all speakers that Christians want to see, like not who non-Christians don't want to see. Like at least Billy Graham, like if you went to a Billy Graham event as a non-Christian, you knew what you were getting into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he was known all over the place. But like these events are just like, you know, like they're like concerts basically. And like they're meant to make Christians feel better about being Christian, not about actually converting anybody. But then they sell it as like a conversion event.
Right. But I think my point being that even the conversion event really is kind of the church at its worst.
Yes.
Like so over like even in my lifetime, in your lifetime, you know, I've been some like even though I haven't been a Christian all my life, I've been church adjacent
Mhm.
all my life. And early in my life, you know, back in the 1970s and 80s, there was a clear mission of the local church to make sure that communities were cared for in their real lives. You
Right.
know, if somebody lost their job, you know, it was Father Joe who showed up at the door like, "Oh, I just happened to have some extra bag of groceries." You
Mhm.
know, if somebody was short on the rent, you know, you could go to a church and get real help for the real problems in your life. And that is something that is sorely lacking. And we can actually see the church divesting itself of those responsibilities over time. And so of course people are going to look somewhere to have to for the slack to be picked up, you know?
Yeah, because like
And
when you see in churches as much as you do like you know in other arenas of life, we hear people talk about you know we don't want to be taken advantage of. You know these people like do they deserve our help? That kind of thing. It's like not stuff Jesus talks about.
right,
You know, it's like it's just that the church has given up on its mission of being you know
the
Jesus'
church.
hands and feet.
Right. Like what Jesus told the church to be.
Hmm.
It's a weird thing to agree with like it's a weird thing for you and I to agree with Christians for a lot of the times, but you
But
actually
we
have to
are
agree with them,
Christians, just to remind everybody.
right? But it's actually it makes a lot of sense to me that even Christians don't look to the church anymore for meaningful change because the church doesn't want to be in that business anymore, and it is a business now. You know,
Yeah.
you and I have kind of gone over the financial benefits of running a church as a head pastor more than one time now.
Yeah.
It's an incredible money making opportunity for those who know how to navigate those waters.
Yeah, and I just like want to like say like I've had conversations with people who like are Christians, evangelical Christians to be I guess a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
And that like they were deeply offended that anything like feeding the poor and clothing the naked
Yes.
would be done through the government. But
Right.
the queer thing about it is that their arguments were then like, well, it's about us. Like we should be the ones as Christians doing this, but never like institutionally as the church. But
Right.
individual Christians need to like do their diligence. And it's like, well, that's the problem is that like I cannot fix homelessness in my community. And me just choosing who I serve in my community isn't helpful. Rather than like an organized system, right? Who can
Right.
know who all the homeless or the hungry people are and can help like know what each person needs and then we can each do our part to funnel that like that's better. So it's like it neuters our mission because it turns Jesus into just like this personal thing, not a corporate thing. And like by corporate I mean like the body of believers,
Right.
you know, and like at no point in the Bible was the individual believer like the fundamental unit of God's people.
Right.
You know, so it just seems weird that churches or Christians now will complain about the government doing good godly things and then won't like force churches to take up the reign and then place it all in individual discernment or prerogative. It almost assures that nothing Christians are going to get done because
There you go.
you
Thank
can't
you.
do it
Thank you for
effectively.
finally saying it. Christians are actually in the business of ensuring that nothing Christ like gets done. Thank you for finally saying it and not kind of weaving your way around it.
Yeah, like I was trying to get there. Like I knew it was like the shape of it was in
Yeah.
my head, but it's like I don't want to say like Christians. But I do want to at least clarify that, like, you know, like American evangelicalism is its own kind of an animal within Christendom.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. Like when you get on your social media apps now, it doesn't matter what stream of Christianity they swim in. It all sounds the same. You get on Nextdoor.com, and all it is people talking about the panhandlers on the corner and how you shouldn't give money to them. It's
Hmm.
not just limited to evangelicals.
Okay,
These are
I'll
all
accept
these
that.
are all people who would consider themselves Christians. So throwing evangelicals under the bus does nobody any service
Yeah, I'll buy
in
that.
this conversation. Yeah, you know, this is clearly a case like I think where did I hear it before? I think I've actually said it on the show before. The aging baby boomers have walked through and shut every door that the greatest generation has opened for them, right?
Yeah.
Incredible freedom both here and around the world. Rights for women, rights for minorities, right? Under the greatest generation, we've seen the creation of an incredible middle class. We've seen that women flourish. We see that minorities flourish, and now we have a generation of aging baby boomers who seem to want to shut that all down.
Yeah, it's like because they're not happy with how the rest of us are handling it,
Right.
basically.
And if they can use the church as their tool to make it happen, right? If they can use the church to do even less to help the homeless, to help the needy, then they'll press on every lever to get that done. If they can get the government to consume the church to make those things happen, even better, right? So to me,
Hmm.
this is a very conscious and planned evolution that we're going through to see the church distracted and marginalized so that people can have their imagined reality instead of actually going through the work of making the world better.
Right, like because my church does a lot of its stuff through a local secular center,
Yeah.
and the reason for that is because like our church, for its size, doesn't have the resources. But like we don't have another church in the area. Like there's not like a big Catholic church, for instance, that's able to do all that work.
Hmm.
So it's like that's the problem. Is that like small churches are forced to go to secular organizations to work with them to get these things done because there's just isn't enough church community in that community because a lot of churches themselves are like fighting against each other. Like they're not
Right.
even cooperating with one another.
Right.
And then like where does that leave people like you and me? Like, well, I can either support, I can either go to like that like the outreach center and do stuff there because that's what my church does.
Hmm.
Or I can leverage the government's power to get things taken care of and do that way. And I think a lot of it's going to be like when our churches are often not even interested enough to go help at the local outreach center, then it
Hmm.
forces people like you and me to support more social programs through the government.
Hmm.
So it doesn't surprise me at all that like you have more and more people going to, use government power to get good things done.
Right.
And I think it's a moral thing to do to get good done to use whatever tool you have. So if that government's the tool, use the government. If the church is the tool, use the church. But when the church is not being the church, well, it gives you only one tool to go to.
Right. And in the end, I think the way I want to wrap this all up is the church pretty much ensures its own demise, right?
Hmm.
And the goal of this podcast is actually kind of to answer that question, like, why is the church less relevant? Well, because here we are, because Christians have made it so,
Yeah.
you know, by this exact thing. All right. So we are Churches Lame. This is a podcast where we try to fix the church by talking about the crazy things churches do that break the entire body. So, by all means, I would love to hear from you and your opinion on what it means to be a church that is in decline, or whether you disagree with us. Maybe you think the church is at its best right now. We'd love to hear from you. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and hit subscribe. Click all those buttons. Click, click, click. And if you're listening to this podcast, shoot us an email, churcheslanepodcast@gmail.com.
And for those of you who've stuck around this long, thank you so much. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.